This is a very unplanned video, but a very necessary one. I wanted to touch on the video I had made previously about getting out of an abusive relationship. And for me, it took me years of being abused to get out of mine. What I'm currently going through is a lot to talk about and a lot to handle. And it's, I don't even know where to begin with it. But it's important that somebody talks about it and that somebody touches on stuff like this. I was with my fiance for almost 3 years. It was well over 2.5 years, approaching the 3-year mark. And he was extremely abusive. In the beginning, I fell for him because he said he never felt that way about anybody else, and he fell for me and loved me, and he had so many horrible things in his life that he just needed somebody to believe in him. And so I did. I believed in him and was there, and it took only a couple months of us dating for him to, for the first time, hit me, and he grabbed my arm so bad he scarred it. He dug his nails in, and I was really upset, really mortified by it, and he said it's so unlike him, and he promised he'd never do it again if I'd stay and work with him, and just everyone else gave up on him. Don't give up. So I didn't. And then I kept getting worse. And turns out he has a domestic violence charge because he pushed his underage niece through a glass door. And he has a domestic violence restraining order from the ex that was right before me. Which, I was not aware of this in the beginning. And I believed that if I just gave up on him, I would be like everyone else. And that's just not me, because I care about people and I love people. And because I've got PTSD, I thought, well, I'm not perfect. How can I judge somebody? And then it started escalating. He was lying about everything. He would lie about serious things, like he lied about his 30-something-year-old neighbor having sex with him when he was 16, and possibly her oldest son was his. To then it turns out he said he never slept with her. It was just all made up. But it was as serious as him wondering about having a son out there, and should he try to get in this son's life. And it turns out it's all untrue, which is crazy to think. It's just crazy to think someone would make up something so heavy and cry fake tears about thinking this is their son when he never even slept with the person, allegedly. I mean, it was heavy, hard-hitting, crazy things, and the physical abuse kept getting worse. He would drink, and he would put his forearm around my neck and choke me while taking his hands on the side of my face and turning my head while choking me, trying to twist my neck and snap it. And that was one of his two things that he always did. It was that, and he would, not an emotional person, but he would not only do that, he would push me to my knees, and he would take his elbow and put his whole weight into it, and elbow my forehead and my temple. He has knocked me unconscious repetitively. He has caused permanent damage. I have on part of my forehead on this side a permanent dent from where he literally fractured in part of my skull. He kicked me with the heel of his foot in the face while I was sitting down and shattered my nose. It's completely on one side impossible to, like, you can't breathe out of it. It's shut so far. Luckily it was put back in place fairly well, but it still curves and it's still very hard to breathe, and it needs work done so I can actually breathe correctly. But it was awful, and he just kept making excuses. And then when I said I couldn't take it anymore, about not very far into it, not quite a year, I believe, of us being together, he had made it very clear to me that he had guns and he would kill me and my daughter. I had a daughter before him. I have 2 daughters now. I had a daughter before him. Her name is Riley. She was not 1 year old when we got together. She's 3.5 now. So he threatened her life and my life, and I believed it. I believed he would kill us because of how violent he was and how bad the violence was getting, and he was twisting my neck. He was trying to kill me. Well, I stayed because I thought, I knew he had access to guns and knives, and I knew that he had tried just bare hands to do this to me before, and I didn't want my selfishness to cause something to happen. So he started saying he would change if he had, he wanted a family, he wanted to feel like he was part of a family, and he was controlling everything. I couldn't talk to people or message people or do anything without his permission. I couldn't work, nothing. If I went to do a job, it would have to be if he approved it, and if he approved the people I was working with and what kind of jobs I took and how long I was there, who I messaged, what I said to them, what we did, what we ate. I had to make homemade meals every day for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and a snack, and how they were. Everything was that controlled and that meticulous. And then because I've been very blunt and open on this channel, on a sexual note, we weren't very compatible. He said he didn't prefer men. He liked men and women both equally, but he preferred being in a submissive role sexually, and he liked men. He liked to be the female role with men, and he began pressuring me to do the exact opposite of the things I'm sexually comfortable with, to basically take on like a male role with him, and I was getting nothing in return because he wouldn't ever do anything pleasing to me. And since I've been open with my sexuality, it was the biggest insult in the world because he wouldn't do anything that I normally liked, and on top of that, he was, in a way that was non-consensual and awful, he was hurting me physically, and it was just awful. Well, anyways, I ended up getting pregnant, and long story short, he did the first pregnancy, he kicked me in the stomach repetitively when he was drunk and angry, and I had fallen backwards and I had a miscarriage, lost the baby, and it devastated me. We were going to name her Gila, and it just broke my heart. Well, he ended up convincing me to keep trying. I got pregnant again, and then I had this little girl, my second daughter. Her name is Reagan, and he was abusive through the pregnancy, but he slowed down a little bit. Well, we came home. I had horrible preeclampsia, so the swelling was so bad, the water weight and swelling, that I couldn't walk. I couldn't do anything, and I was holding our newborn. But we got home from the hospital. My newborn was 9.5 days old. I was holding her, and he had gotten a hold of alcohol and drink. And he ended up just being belligerently drunk. And while I was holding our newborn, he started doing that where he elbows me in the forehead and pushes me down. And then he started clawing at my neck, which I literally had pictures of the deep claw marks on the sides of my neck. I have pictures and documentation of this all. And I literally had to, while he was elbowing me a few times, he had bumped the baby. So I laid on the floor over her to try to protect her so she wouldn't get injured from him doing this to me. And he was grabbing my face, trying to twist it, trying to get his arm around my neck, and then getting his arm around my neck, choking me. And my grandparents, on my mom's side, biological mom's side, they were in the home and they saw this. They were begging and crying and trying to pull him off of me and saying, "You're going to kill your baby, you're going to kill your fiance, what are you doing, Chris?" And they were so upset by everything. And I was so afraid for her, for our newborn. And of course, so were my grandparents. Anyways, he had made it very clear that if I left, he would not only kill me, he would find a way to take the girls, and he would kill them first, so that hurt me emotionally. And he had made that clear. So I stayed because I was terrified. I didn't know what to do, but I got a counselor because he started using drugs, which he had in his far past before I met him, and started up again. So I got him to allow me to get a counselor because I had told him it was just hard for me to deal with the postpartum and stuff like that. And eventually, once he met the counselors, he met everything at the place that I wanted to go, he eventually approved and allowed me to talk to them. So I got into this mental health program for myself, and I started working out a safety plan to leave Christian. At first, it didn't start that way. It started with me saying I don't know the future with my fiance because he's so physically abusive. But there was a final straw for me. Over this summer, he had gotten really drunk and tried to sexually assault me. And in that instance, he didn't. But then twice in September, the very beginning of September and the middle end of September, I have the exact dates, and I went and had a rape kit done. He ended up being able to sexually assault me and rape me on 2 occasions. We were both drinking, and it's up to debate. It was, at this time, because of how abusive he was, I told him we weren't going to be physical with each other sexually, and we hadn't had sex in months with each other, which that was because of how violent he was being. And he literally started beating me the way I described, like same Christian, same Chris. He would just choke me and scratch me and try to twist my head. And he ended up, not to get too graphic, he ended up forcing me down, kind of straddling himself over my legs so I couldn't kick him or couldn't get away. And he ended up, in early September, being able to sexually assault me. And I mean, I was clawing at his arms, I was screaming no. I mean, it was bad. It wasn't up to debate. It wasn't, oh, well, I just didn't want to, but it was a blatant, I was crying and begging him to stop, no. And I told him, this wasn't him. He hadn't done this before, to please stop. And he wouldn't listen, he wouldn't stop. And unfortunately, on 2 occasions, he was able to rape me. And I knew I had to get away. And then it started where our daughter was able to now crawl around. And he felt if she was turning around and crawling in her sleep, that would wake her. So I saw him take our newborn, and he would hold her on his chest when he slept, and she slept, excuse me. And if she tried to move at all, he would hold her head in place, hold her arms by her side down, and hold her legs down so she couldn't move at all. I was like, Christian, this is not right, this is wrong. And he kept saying, well, if she moves at all, she could wake up, and I'm not dealing with that. He started calling her a C word, C-U-N-T, a little bitch, some awful slurs towards this tiny baby at the time. She was about 6 months old when this started, and that's when I knew he was holding her and being physical towards her. And I knew by holding her and restraining her, at the time it wasn't hitting her or anything like that yet. But I started getting a safety plan together with my counselor, and actually had to talk to a medical doctor, and to rewind a little bit. The last time he sexually assaulted me, he ended up causing cuts on me vaginally, and they were bad enough where it was really hurting, and he said if I had a phone pocket dialed in my pocket so he knew I wasn't getting him arrested, I could go to the doctor and have it looked at. And I had them do a full rape kit because of how it was. I had them document everything. I told them I was raped. I didn't tell them who because he was listening in, and he had literally threatened to kill both of my daughters if I were to say his name. But I was very clear and gave details of what happened, and the OBGYN who did this saw very clearly the trauma, and she said it was absolutely, clearly sexual assault. She documented that. It was awful. Anyways, so I was working on then a safety plan with my counselor to get out between that and between the sexual assault and seeing what he did with my youngest daughter. And then everything kind of escalated because he got drunk again this November and was physical towards me, but I watched him and had seen him shake the baby. I had seen him a couple of days prior to this, early November, shake her out of anger. And he's like, oh, I wasn't doing it that hard. I just got upset it won't happen again. And then in this instant, I saw him again really, angrily shake her. And that was that. That was the end of it. The police escorted him out. I am building a case now against him. I have a restraining order. I'm going for the 10 years when we have the hearing. But that was that. That was it. The police made him leave. And I decided to go in immediately and file a restraining order. And then I decided, now that I had the restraining order for protection, that I was going to press charges because he raped me. And I was told when I got the rape kit to press charges, but I was too afraid that he was going to literally kill our youngest daughter and my daughter, my older daughter. So I didn't press charges then, but I made sure they got every detail and saw every injury. And I had reached out. I had told my counselor what happened. I had reached out and told, I luckily was able to get my phone. He was super drunk one night, and he had it where only he could unlock it. Well, he left it unlocked and passed out, and I was able to reach out to a couple of people and tell them what was going on. So I have witnesses to what happened. I have pictures from 11 different events from him beating me. I have the rape kit. I have outcry witnesses. I have my grandparents who saw him physically beating me. I have a medical doctor, and a therapist who have seen the bruises. He actually talked with me once about his physical violence to a counselor. I have those notes. I've got so much evidence.